This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is the artist for week number 2 of KCCK's 30th year of Jazz Under the Stars, saxophone player, professor, and educator, Damani Phillips. Damani, welcome.
Morning, Dennis. How you doing today?
It's nice to see you.
Fantastic. Likewise.
You've been around the area for some time, and we've worked together on several of our programs, but This is the first time that you've been in the studio, the first time that we've been able to kind of present you in your full job as a headliner. So we're very excited about next week's show.
No, very, very happy to be a part of it, and we appreciate you extending the invitation to have us come out and play.
So, as I said, next up, Thursday, August 11th for Jazz Under the Stars. You'll be in a trio. We'll talk about the trio in just a minute. But let's start with, tell me the Damani story. I know you grew up in Detroit, the Detroit area.
Yep, just north of Detroit. My hometown is Pontiac, Michigan, about 20 miles north of the city, and went to a bunch of different schools around the country, and then ended up in Iowa for my first job at Grinnell College.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And was there for 5 years, and then I was given the offer to move to the University of Iowa 4 years ago, and so obviously accepted that, and just earned tenure as of May of this year.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
Thanks. So I'm here for a bit now, it appears.
And I know that when you got your doctorate program, that was in, was that Northern Colorado?
No, just University of Colorado.
University of Colorado,
yeah,
okay. I know that you were one of the first African Americans to achieve a doctorate in that program.
Yeah, that's funny that that sounds kind of odd considering it's 2000 and what?
Exactly.
9 by the time that happened, and you'd think there'd be more, but the number of programs are relatively few, and for whatever reason, African Americans tend not to choose that avenue as their means of working through the music. So to the best of my knowledge, and I looked actively to find other African Americans who were either working on it or had already earned it and could find none. So I legitimately think that is absolutely 100% accurate.
Well, that makes it an achievement for you, but one that we hope is not quite so rare in the future, I guess.
Indeed, sir. That is a very peculiar stat, and we're hoping to do what we can to try to balance the scales a bit.
And your appointment at the university is actually two different. You're in the music department.
I am.
But then you also have an appointment in the African American Studies department.
Yes, so dual appointment, half and half. So half of my responsibilities are academically related and for the African American Studies department. But the good news is that usually entails classes related to music, to black music. So even though technically it's African American Studies, it's very, very much kind of a combined job. Just one is more on the academic side, one is more on the performance side of things.
Tell me just a little bit more about those, the more academic programs, the kinds of classes, where you draw the students from. Are they from more from the music department, or all around campus? What do your courses look like?
Well, for the African American Studies side of things, those classes are offered specifically for students who have no music background, and if students who are in music want to take them, then they're welcome to enroll. But they're designed with non-music students in mind, designed to offer to round out the offerings of the African American Studies department, because all of the colleagues in that department are dual appointments. English, African American Studies, theater, African American Studies, communication studies, African American Studies. So when you put the whole department together, there's a pretty broad pool of expertises available for all those people, and it's meant specifically for all students, not just a specialized group like music. So it allows that part of the curriculum, black music. So I do 2 classes, or I have traditionally, kind of a black music survey class that starts from the beginning, from slavery days with spirituals, hymns, things of that nature, and goes all the way up into hip hop. And the other class is more along the lines, it's jazz related, but it approaches it from a more cultural studies perspective. So not so in depth with the technical aspects of the music, more about the cultural kind of implications of the music over the course of the 1900s into current day. So it's an interesting mix of things, and of course you have to learn to approach the music from a different perspective.
Is it more difficult today to help students draw those connections from jazz music into hip hop and what today's young people are a little bit more into?
Yeah, it is a real challenge. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that because there's such an abundance of information and music through online sources, students tend to have a short historical memory. And so even though it's something that's just 30 years ago, which to us doesn't seem like all that much, to them, 30 years ago might as well be the age of the dinosaurs. And so you have to help them make the connections and see that even though, it's John Coltrane, he actually has connection to what say J. Cole's doing in hip hop now, and they don't make that connection readily. So it's part of the excitement of it is getting them to understand that while you think that's old folks music, while you think that's outdated or outmoded, it actually is not. It's very much connected to what you listen to on a regular basis. You just don't realize it yet. So that's kind of the exciting part of it. And when they make the connection and the light bulb comes on, then all of a sudden you find them kind of a rekindled or a renewed interest in music styles besides what's in their iPods or streaming through their Rhapsody accounts. So,
talking with Damani Phillips, whose trio performs at Jazz Under the Stars coming up on August 11th. Now let's talk about your life as a player. Who would you describe as your major influences?
If there are two people I think if I had to say were the most influential on me would be these folks. One would by far be Cannonball Adderley. I think if there's any one player who spoke to me most, it would be him. And a close second would be Kenny Garrett, who's also from Detroit, oddly enough. Didn't know that when I heard him. It just worked out that way. And also worked with one of my past teachers, Marcus Belgrave, who passed away here a few years ago. Between those two, it's funny, Cannonball has that very earthy, down home, very open and communicable approach to playing that, most folks can latch on to, whether you, have advanced degree work in the music or if you've never heard a lick of jazz in your life. And that's kind of what draws me to his work, that it's applicable to such a wide berth of people. And Kenny Garrett does a great job of finding a way to bring that kind of spirit to the music while updating the harmonic language so that you're not stuck playing the tried and true, inside stuff all the time. And between those two, I figure if I could be a synergy between those two folks with a splash of what makes Damani Phillips, then I've achieved a winning formula. Obviously a work in progress, but that is the goal.
Your most recent release was a double CD.
Yep.
That you took. It was really almost two entirely different takes on your work, but you released them together. What were you trying to accomplish with that?
I'm of the belief that modern jazz is making a mistake in that it's spiraling so far into the realm of theoretical complexity that we've forgotten that there is a base of listeners that is not going to be able to connect with that readily. And so my idea behind it was if I can find a way to reach out to those younger listeners, those people who are yet to, like the students who land in my classes, who feel like jazz is some kind of a weird foreign, ancient language like Sanskrit or something. If I can find a way to reach out to them and get them on board with what's happening in the music, more along the lines of growing a listener base, as opposed to trying to force this, modernized approach onto them and have them compared to what they're listening to on a daily basis and, not being able to make any sense of it. So it was kind of a weird kind of effort to reach new listeners. For those older listeners or more experienced listeners who liked traditional jazz, there was a disc of that for them, and then it was paired with a disc of music that combined jazz with hip hop. So maybe they would run into something new that they hadn't considered. Vice versa, the younger people would latch onto the hip hop stuff, and then it'd be a disc of the more traditional stuff, and then maybe they give that a fair shake. So it was my weird kind of unusual way of attempting to reach as broad a swath of people as possible, while still trying to maintain some integrity and not turning everything into a pop song, because that can be a danger too, wanting to reach out to listeners, but watering down the music to the point where it's diluted to a fault. And so attempting to straddle that line, and it's a real tough place to try to be, trying to, maintain integrity at the same time, be attractive to new listeners or inexperienced listeners. Because if we aren't careful, we're going to play ourselves into extinction.
Branford said almost exactly the same thing when he was here this spring, that we as a jazz music industry are running the risk of just playing for each other instead of playing for an audience.
Absolutely. And like I say, with a little bit of effort and a little bit of a philosophical adjustment, I think that we can address that. We can actively address it, but it's not going to fix itself. We can't just keep playing self-serving music that's not even remotely concerned about the consumer or the people who are listening to it, the people who come to shows like Jazz Under the Stars. You have to at least consider them in this equation. It can't just be about me, I, we. It can't always be that way. If not, then like you say, we're going to, playing for other highly credentialed, experienced jazz listeners, and that's a very small number.
The jazz audience is small enough already.
Exactly. And you're playing to some small niche, some small, tiny pocket of the, experienced jazz audience. That's a bad formula. If you did it in any other area, if it was a business, say a business deal, you'd know right away that was a poor business choice because you lose money and the strategy would be changed. Yet and still we continue to kind of ignore that. So it was an attempt to try to at least make an effort to reach out and not have it be just about impressing others who are just like me.
Well, speaking of Jazz Under the Stars, you're going to be, as we said, in a trio format. So tell me who's going to be joining you.
I'll be joined by Mitchtown, organ player from Omaha, Nebraska, and local favorite on the drums, Mr. Tim Crumley.
It's always a pleasure to have Tim at the drum set. And we don't see Mitchtown this far east very often. I've seen him before, and I know he gets into Des Moines on a somewhat regular basis. So we're very excited to have him in the eastern side of the state too.
No, absolutely. And you have to understand that's like a 3.5-hour drive, to get here. But every now and then I try to make it a special occasion if I ask him to come out this way, and Jazz Under the Stars definitely fit the bill as it relates to that, and he agreed graciously. And so we're really looking forward to getting together and making some magic happen, knock on wood.
What's the program going to look like? Combination, I assume, of standards and some of your originals?
Absolutely. Again, with the organ, because it's close affinity with that 50s, 60s kind of blue note soul jazz stuff, that will definitely be heavily represented in there.
Oh,
and
nice.
With me being a cannonball guy, obviously there's no way that I can have that instrumentation and not at least include a little bit of that. But also mixing in some modern stuff. Again, it's trying as best possible not to just come from one area of the history of the music, spread it around a bit, because it's not just about things that people recognize. You want to offer, stuff that's new to them, stuff that pushes the ear a little bit. You just don't want, 3 hours of it.
Right. Yeah, so, it's an adventure. It's a journey.
Absolutely. And so there'll be a nice mixture of things, but that soul jazz era stuff is definitely going to be heavily represented. A little bit of modern stuff, some of my originals, a couple of those mixed in as well. So we're hoping to put together a pretty balanced show with a little bit of something for everybody, and hopefully something everybody can enjoy.
We're looking forward to it. Jazz Under the Stars, August 11th at Norridge Park. This will also be the KCCK CD and record sale, so we'll have a couple of thousand used CDs and a lot of vinyl there that people can, while they're listening, can pick through and find some fun stuff to take home. So that will be going on at the same time. Damani, I appreciate you coming in today. Really excited to have you at Jazz Under the Stars. And this is actually your first of two appearances, because you'll be back in a couple of weeks with Ritmo Kano.
That's right.
On the final Jazz Under the Stars. So we're getting a double shot of Damani.
Yep. Two completely different spheres, though. So that's exciting. That makes me happy that I'll get to appear.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we're looking forward to it. We'll see you on Thursday at Jazz Under the Stars.
Very cool. Thank you again for having me. Appreciate it.